The young boy fidgets in his cap and gown among a large group of peers who are doing the same thing. It's been 12 years. 12 seemingly endless years. 12 very difficult years. 12 years of feeling very different from all of his classmates. 12 years which he knew were only a precursor for things to come. 12 years in which his own parents seemed to have no sense of the emotional turmoil that every single day brought to this teenager. He wasn't sure what exactly lay before him, but he knew that it would be something very different from what life had been so far. He knew that his high school graduation was a turning point. Everything he had learned, both within the classroom and outside of it, were preparation for the rest of his life. He felt giddy with excitement, scared of the unknown, and relief that he had finally made it this far. He had anticipated all of those feelings, but not the sudden, overwhelming feeling of loneliness that seemed to engulf him. More than anything else, he felt alone. He couldn't seem to focus on the words of the high school principal speaking into the microphone. And even with the dozens of students surrounding him, most of whom he had come to know as his friends, he was feeling very, very alone. At that moment, as sweat began to pop out on his forehead, all he wanted was the comfort and reassurance from his parents that everything would be okay. He needed to know that things would work out for him. Finally, it was his turn. His name was called, and he made the mile-long trek across the stage to receive his diploma. And as he turned to make his exit, he found himself looking into the beaming face of his father, camera in one hand and the other hand giving him the thumbs up signal. He hadn't been alone after all. His parents had been there all along, and all his fears and apprehension about the future were wiped away when his parents hugged him afterwards and told him how very proud they were of him. And he knew they were. They loved him, and he was sure that everything was going to be okay. It wouldn't be easy for him, but he was going to make it. It made no sense, but as long as he knew that there was someone in this world rooting for him, he was going to make it. The baptism of Jesus, as described in this morning's text from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 3, verses 21 and 22, has all the elements of a high school graduation ceremony. Just like the high school graduate who stands at the crossroads of life, as Jesus approached the banks of the Jordan River, he must have realized that he was at a turning point in his own life. The modern-day teenager has decisions to make. Will she go to college, or will he join the workforce? Will he set down roots within a community that has nurtured him since before he could remember? Or will she relocate to a strange and unfamiliar city or state or country and start fresh? Jesus also had decisions to make. If his father Joseph was a carpenter, there were probably the hope and expectation that he would stick around and help out with the family business. Maybe even take over after Joseph had passed on. But his passion for the Torah, for the Psalms, and for the words of the ancient prophets seemed to consume him and even pull him away from what may have been expected of him by his parents. They most likely had their doubts and worries. The last thing they needed was another lunatic in the family like that crazy cousin John running around in the desert half naked and making a scene of himself. But even though Jesus was usually calm and level-headed, he seemed to be drawn to his cousin's words. Words which demanded repentance and renewal. Words which proclaimed the imminence of God's dominion. Yes, as Jesus stood on the banks of the Jordan listening to the bellowing message of his charismatic cousin, he must have known that he was at a crossroads in life. And the time had come for him to make a decision. And like any high school graduate, he must have been feeling a little shaky, a little unsure of himself, and very, very alone. As he stepped into the water, its surface climbing up the body past his waist and up to his chest, if he was at all human, and I believe he was, he must have had his doubts. Was he doing the right thing? Was he being drawn by God's Spirit, or was the attraction of the adventurous life of a desert prophet appealing to him?